Hello and welcome to another edition of Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. This week we're going to look at another colour analysis of a film, and the film that I've chosen is the 1986 version of Crocodile Dundee. But first I'd like to welcome those of you who've been watching my videos. I hope you've been enjoying them. I hope you've gotten something out of them. And welcome to any new viewers. If you haven't subscribed yet, perhaps you might consider doing so. If you like what I'm doing, please give it a like, because YouTube doesn't respond to any other sort of thing to allow their algorithms to pass these videos on to other people. Let's get started. In 1986, an Australian comedian by the name of Paul Hogan got together some friends and they created a film which was only a very low budget film, and it was designed to appeal to both Australian and United States audiences. Well, it became one of the highest grossing films worldwide in that year, and Paul Hogan himself achieved stardom. His character, Crocodile Dundee, has become an international phenomenon, pretty well representing Australia. The film combines both drama and comedy, and it's located in both rural Australia and also in New York City. Because this film predated the PC era and also predated the internet as such, there are some trigger warnings. There's semi-nudity, there's some non-consensual touching, drug taking is depicted, and there is a mild level of violence as well. So if you haven't seen the film, you're warned, but I do recommend it. It's a very funny film. Today, I'm going to present you with the plot, and as I do so, I will also be presenting the colours of significance that combine to make an analysis at the end. The plot begins in Sydney, where Sue Charlton, a feature writer for a New York newspaper, wearing black and white, wants to investigate the story of a man whose leg was severed in a crocodile attack and who managed to survive alone until he was able to get help, dragging himself through the bush as he did so. She obtains consent for the trip from her lover boss, Richard, who we can see here wearing a red and brown shirt and a green tie. Richard is reluctant for her to go, but he knows that he can't stop her. Sue, wearing grey, white and blue, arrives at Walkabout Creek, where she is greeted by Mick Dundee's partner, Wally, who is wearing white. He has a tendency to embellish the story, and so regales Sue with the features of the wonderful survival. Having booked into a local hotel, Sue, wearing now just white and grey, is waiting for Mick to arrive at a pub gathering where there are many people present. Mick finally arrives, bearing with him a stuffed crocodile, and he introduces himself to Sue. He then leads her to the floor where they begin to dance. As they do so, another pub patron begins to goad Mick. And whilst still dancing, Mick lashes out and knocks the man out with one punch. The man is removed from the pub, and Mick then becomes the centre of attention for all of the other patrons and also for the barmaids. The next day, the journey begins. Wally, Mick and Sue travel together to a designated place to retrace Mick's survival journey. Mick, wearing blue and brown and with his black hat, Sue in a white top, and Wally also in white, stop for a while to talk at the side of a river. As they continue their journey, Sue dons a blue hat and begins to interview Mick. But their road is soon blocked by a buffalo. Mick gets out and manages to subdue the beast, turning it into a sleeping giant. While this is going on, Sue, in amazement, takes photographs. They travel by boat across a crocodile-infested river, where Sue, wearing white and black and carrying a white and yellow flower, is warned about crocodiles and so changes her position so that her hands are no longer dangling in the water. Once on the other side, they journey to the place where Mick's boat had been attacked by the crocodile and where it still remains stuck in the trees. Again, Sue takes photographs. That night, as they were camping, they were woken by gunfire. And that gunfire occurred as a result of a group of people going kangaroo shooting. Mick manages to scare them away by taking a kangaroo carcass, attaching a gun to it and pretending that the kangaroo was fighting back. The next day, as they're preparing for their trek, Mick in brown and black and Sue in black and blue engage in a little bit of a difference of opinion, where Mick goads Sue and she decides to take off on her own. Proving that she knows where she's headed, Sue dons her blue hat and a white veil and begins to walk towards the escarpment where they will meet up later. Unbeknownst to her, of course, Mick continues to track her. Unbeknownst to her, of course, Mick begins to track her progress. Sue, in black now, stops at a riverside to cool off, splashes water on herself, and finds herself being attacked by a crocodile. Mick lunges forward and kills the crocodile, thereby saving Sue's life. That night, they are visited by an Aboriginal man who is on his way to a tribal gathering called a corroboree. Here, Sue is told that this is a place no women are allowed to see, but she sneaks off and witnesses the corroboree in progress. While she's surreptitiously taking photographs, Mick looks directly at her and down the camera lens, making sure that she knows that he knows she's there. Back at Walkabout Creek, Wally prepares to collect Mick and Sue from their designated pickup point, and in doing so, he speaks with a man at a blue petrol pump. Sue, now in black, blue, and white writing on her chest, and Mick in a grey shirt along with his usual brown and black, continue to a waterhole called a billabong. There, Mick prepares a goanna for their meal, along with some yams that he tempts Sue to taste. After dinner, they both go for a swim in the billabong, and then Mick pauses to do some fishing with a wooden spear. As the day goes on, Sue and Mick Dundee kiss out of her gratitude for his rescuing her. They're interrupted by Wally's cooey, a sound made in the Australian bush to notify people that there is someone out there looking for you. Wally, now wearing a brown scarf and still in his traditional white outfit, suggests to Mick that there has been a liaison between him and Sue. Mick doesn't want to know. Wally then walks over to Sue, who tells him that she wants Mick to come to New York. So off they go to New York. Mick, wearing his brown and black outfit along with a white shirt, is very nervous about flying and trying very hard not to show it. Sue, on the other hand, wearing brown, blue, and black, offers some sort of comfort and encouragement for the flight. They are met in New York by Richard in a blue shirt and grey suit, and while they're waiting, Mick finds himself having to contend with an escalator, one in which he is not sure how to travel down it. He's wearing grey trousers along with his white shirt and brown jacket, black hat. Eventually he gets onto the escalator, but he manages to trip up a woman passenger coming down the escalator carrying a blue bag. In the car, he's met with traffic and people. As they travel, Sue is delighted with Mick's response to the crowds, whereas Richard is displaying disparaging amusement and at the same time indicating possessiveness over Sue. Mick checks into a hotel where he's taken upstairs to a rather plush set of rooms. There he comes across the convention of tipping the staff, something that he misunderstands and instead actually tries to shake the man's hand instead. In his exploration of the apartment, he comes across a bidet and has to ask Sue how it is used, but she refuses to do so telling him to work it out himself. Once Sue has left again, Mick decides to go for a walk and, of course, inevitably becomes lost. Seeing the closest thing to a tree as a traffic sign pole, he climbs it to see if he can find his way back. But instead, he's brought back by a friendly policeman on a horse. The policeman, of course, is wearing a blue uniform. That evening, Richard and Sue take Mick out to a restaurant for dinner. Mick is wearing his brown suit and black hat, and this time with a green shirt. Richard has a white suit and blue shirt, and Sue is similarly dressed in blue, carrying a white purse. As they sit at the table, Richard begins to goad Mick, and you can see that Mick is becoming very frustrated with the disparagement. Distracting both Sue and Richard for a moment, he takes the opportunity to knock Richard out. That, of course, upsets Sue, who then insists on them going home, ending the evening, and is very angry with Mick. But Mick is determined to have a good time in New York. And so he meets a cabbie in a yellow hat who is about to go off duty. They go to a pub. And there in the pub, Mick is entranced by a transvestite wearing a black dress. Eventually, the cabbie informs Mick that this is a man, not a woman, whereupon Mick checks out the person's genitalia and then is astounded by the laughter from the primarily blue-clad patrons at that hotel. Outside, while waiting for the cabbie to find his cab and come back, Mick meets two prostitutes. One of them is clad in black and white, the other in red and white. And it is this red and white clad woman who recognizes Mick from the newspaper reports. And so the two of them begin to engage in conversation. Unfortunately, however, their pimp, also in black and white, arrives and orders them back to work. Mick is very disgusted with this attitude and knocks the pimp out, again felling him with a single blow. The next day we find Mick in the bath washing his socks. Sue, in a black, white, green and red checked suit, comes to collect him but doesn't announce herself immediately. She notices that his bedding is on the floor, which means that he actually slept there overnight. A maid in grey knocks and comes in with some towels for Mick. He asks her to leave them on the bed, but Sue takes them instead and then embarrasses Mick by the way in which she delivers those towels to him. The two of them now set out on a walking tour of New York City. Mick is wearing a white shirt underneath his brown jacket and still with his black hat. Sue introduces him to hot dogs for breakfast, and she thoroughly enjoys showing him the sights and his astonishment at everything that he sees along the way. Later on, Mick, now wearing a dark blue shirt, and Sue, clad in red, attend a party. There they meet the hostess clad in black, but remembering his previous experience, Mick checks out her genitalia to ensure that she is in fact a woman and quite embarrasses Sue. As he wanders around the party, he lights a cigarette, and a woman wearing a white wig, red earrings and a blue dress takes his cigarette, tries it herself and tells him that's good shit. He's quite astounded by this revelation. In the kitchen, he comes across a male dressed in black and white who is availing himself of some drugs. Mick mistakes this as being the flu and takes the drugs, empties them into a bowl filled with hot water in order to relieve the man of his nasal congestion. At the next opportunity, Mick rings home. Wally, in blue, white and red shirt, is very pleased with the coverage, particularly as he himself appears in the photograph in the newspaper. Mick, back in New York, clad only in a white towel, his black hat and some boots, tells Wally that he wants to stay there for an extended stay. On the next outing, Sue in white and Mick in brown and black are walking down a New York street where they're accosted by a knife-wielding man in a red jacket. Mick defends himself with a larger knife than the robber had, and the assailants flee. Back at work, Sue cannot get involved in what she's supposed to be doing. Wearing a white suit and a grey top, she's deep in thought. Richard, in his white and grey shirt and a coloured tie, observes her closely. There's something he wants to say to her, but now is not the right time. Because Sue's father enters, having come to greet his daughter's return. Dad is dressed in grey, white and black, and he is indeed the owner of the newspaper. He invites them to a society party at his house that evening. When they arrive at the property, Mick is able to subdue the two guard dogs. He's wearing a red shirt at this stage and blue jeans. They go inside and are greeted by Sue's father wearing a white suit and a blue and white striped shirt. Richard is wearing a blue suit and a white shirt, and Sue is wearing a black dress and a black snood. Over dinner, Richard proposes to Sue and she accepts. That makes Mick rather unhappy, although he doesn't show it. On his way home, he comes across where the previous two girls had been, and he goes over to them but realizes they're not the same girls. The pimp appears, and he and two thugs begin to assault Mick. But Mick is rescued by Sue's chauffeur, who drives them away by running them down in his car. The chauffeur, of course, is wearing his blue uniform. The next day, Sue, clad in a red dress with a black and white scarf, rings the hotel to find Mick. But Mick is already on his way out. He's left the hotel, he's saying goodbye to the doorman who is wearing a dark green uniform, and Mick himself has a white shirt on. He says goodbye and heads for the subway. Sue arrives at the hotel and speaks to the doorman, who gives her that information about Mick's departure, whereupon she begins to give chase. As she's walking along rapidly, she realizes she will never make it in her high heels, so throws her shoes off and begins to run towards the subway. There, in the subway stairs, she can see Mick in the distance, but there is a huge crowd waiting for the train. He calls out, and a gentleman wearing a red bandana and blue jacket answers her and passes on a message. That message is picked up by another tall man wearing an orangey red hat, a red, white and black shirt. He manages to alert Mick, and when the message is completed, Mick then climbs on the shoulders of the people in the subway and makes his way back towards the stairs where Sue is waiting for him. Here they reunite and the film ends. So let's now work on the analysis. Throughout the film, Mick is wearing a uniform of a brown jacket or sometimes a brown vest, trousers and a black hat. When he's bare-chested, he's at his greatest power and also at his most comfortable. The original encounter with Sue at the pub, he is bare-chested. When he is tracking and rescuing Sue from the crocodile attack, he's also bare-chested. And later on, without a vest or jacket, he swims and fishes in the billabong. Their first kiss also is taken whilst he is in this semi-naked state. However, when he is nude underneath non-clothing, he is at his greatest vulnerability. So this occurs when he's in the bath, where his private parts are covered by the white suds in the bathtub. And later on, when he's ringing Wally back at Walkabout Creek, he's wearing a white towel wrapped around his loins. But apart from that, the only times that there are changes of costume is when Mick changes the colour of his shirts. He wears a blue shirt on his trip to the crocodile attack site, where he was attacked himself, when he's showing the canoe wreck, and also when he is countering Wally's curiosity after their trek has completed. He also wears a blue shirt while attending that first party with Sue. The result of these blues tends to indicate that he's keeping information that he's gathered to himself. When he has white on, the first time we see this is a painted face during the corroboree. Then he wears a white shirt for his plane trip and also while he is walking alone in New York City. The result of this white wearing tends to suggest that he's engaging in novel experiences. A grey shirt also appears at the billabong and as trousers for his plane trip and when he's exploring New York on his own. When he's wearing grey, he indicates that he's got existing skills that he's using to cope with new or novel experiences. His green shirt at his dinner with Susan and Richard, also next to a green plant for good measure, indicates that this is evidence of his jealousy of their relationship. He also wears a red shirt to the society dinner and later on when he fights with the pimp and the thugs that the pimp has employed. The result of this red tends to suggest that there is evidence of repressed and then expressed anger. Sue's costumes also have a wider colour range and vary between the sites of the film's locations. So in Australia, she primarily wears black, white, grey and blue. When she's wearing black and white together, she's taking charge of a situation. When it's grey and white, she's going along with somebody else's actions and desires. When she's wearing blue, she's working towards a goal. And this is evidenced by her photography and also by her going on a lone trek. When she's in white, she's relaxed. And when she's got black on as the only garment, she is in potential danger. Red appears not as a costume as such, but certainly she is seen in red from the firelight as she has that clandestine visit to the corroboree. This is an indicator of some form of transgressive activity. In New York City, the costume colours change somewhat, and so do the meanings to a certain extent. In New York, when she's wearing brown, she is comfortably in charge of a situation. When she's wearing black and white, she seems to have an inability to take charge of those same situations. White and grey indicate some form of indecisive state where she's not capable of determining what to do next. With blue, she's keeping others calm. With red, she's being both provocative and indicating some form of impulsive activity. In black, she is formal and the activity is an expected elegance. When she wears green, and there's only a very small amount of this in her costumes, she's enjoying the discoveries that Mick is making as he explores New York with her. Wally, the other major character in the Australian location, is clad primarily in white, which indicates that he is dealing with uncertainty. He wants something from Sue, just as he wants something from Mick. His brown necktie and hat indicate that he is asserting himself. Successfully or not, remains to be seen. When he is receiving the phone call from Mick, he's wearing grey, white and red, and this indicates a pleasure in the results of the activities that both he and Mick have engaged in with Sue. The major secondary character in New York is, of course, Richard. Now, Richard is in brown, red and green when he is indulging someone else's request. That is, when he's letting Sue remain in Australia beyond her allotted time. In grey and blue, he's communicating his provisional feelings about Sue. In white and blue, Richard is communicating superiority and the expected success of putting Mick down. In grey, which happens at work, he is exhibiting confusion at his feelings and activities associated with Sue. While the minor characters don't have much time on screen, so we don't really know a lot motivations, they can be divided into helpful people, unhelpful people, and others that are simply neutral in their association with Mick. Looking firstly at the helpful people. In blue, we find the most helpful people are the policeman, the hotel maid, the chauffeur, and the man in the subway. All of these aid Mick in his progress through New York. The yellow-hatted cabbie indicates knowledge of New York and its environs. The green worn as uniform by the doorman indicates that he is a friendly person, which is expected of someone who is a greeter at such an important building. And then we have the red bandanaed and orange-hatted gentlemen in the subway who are accepting the challenge of passing on a message between Sue and Mick. In terms of unhelpful people, we have the pub patron back in Australia wearing brown and red who challenges Mick, pretending that he is far superior in morality and also activity, but finds to his detriment that he's not. The pimp in New York is wearing black and white. He is perceiving that his rights have been threatened, and so he threatens back. The red worn by the robber indicates that he himself is a threat to other people. He also has accomplices wearing white and black as their major costume parts. And then we come to the neutral characters. The people in the pub that laugh at Mick's naivety over the transvestite are primarily wearing blue. This demonstrates that they have knowledge that he does not have. The transvestite lady herself and also the lady who is the hostess at the party later on are both wearing black, which demonstrates an unknowable or an unrecognizable value that these women have that Mick is unaware of. One of the prostitutes and the woman at the party who takes Mick's cigarette are both wearing red in some form. This is a provocative activity. And then we have others wearing black and white, which are sending out confusing messages. The drug taker at the party is wearing grey and white, which tends to indicate that he is confident enough to be able to engage in that activity without any fear of being accosted for it. As well, Sue's father greets her after her return from Australia wearing grey and white as well. Here he's indicating that he is also very confident and assured of his superiority. When he greets them at the party, he's wearing white, which means that he's open to the new experience of meeting a stranger and inviting them to his home. So in this colour analysis, what sort of conclusions can we come to? Well, the colours tend to have different meanings according to the character portrayed and also the location in which they are portrayed. But the basic meanings tend to remain. Brown identifies independence of some sort. Blue associates with communications given or withheld. White is openness to novelty, whereas black is dealing with a certainty. Whether that be a pleasant one or not remains to be seen. Grey represents confusion of some sort. Red is provocative and potentially dangerous. Green represents an emotional response, whether that be delight or distaste, it doesn't matter. And yellow exudes both knowledge and experience. And that's it for the colour analysis of Crocodile Dundee 1. Maybe you'd like to join me again for the next one. I haven't quite decided what film I'm going to do next, but it will probably be one a little bit closer to the 21st century. 1986 was a while ago. If you haven't seen the film, though, it is well worth the effort. But do try to see it on a large screen. A lot of the action happens in the dark, and a small screen just simply doesn't cut it for good visibility. Until next time, bye.